Welcome to Real Estate IQ Wisdom for Smart Moves. We will explore the insider secrets tailored exclusively for Silicon Valley home buyers, sellers, and investors, arming you to conquer the unique real estate landscape. So, without further ado, let's dive into this exciting conversation. Today, we welcome Matthew Angel, the CEO of Angel Law Firm. He practices real estate law, business litigation, civil litigation, and probate litigation. Across Silicon Valley, a glaring knowledge gap persists. A staggering 87% of first-time homebuyers admit they're stepping into the property world blind, unaware of the legal pitfalls and processes. Meanwhile, property disputes are soaring by 15% last year alone. And with over 60% of us without an up-to-date will, the probate maze only thickens. It's a treacherous terrain, but today, we're here to navigate these challenges. Stay tuned as we unravel real estate's most pressing legal issues and forge a path to clarity. The following content is only for informational purposes. Please consult a licensed consultant for your specific situation or if you need any specific legal or tax advice.
Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Sharad. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to get to speak to your viewers.
How do you guide clients through zoning and land use issues?
There is a mistaken belief that your home is your castle and you can do whatever you want. Unfortunately, the municipality, the city, or the state, or the federal government may tell you what you can and cannot do with your property. For example, you may want to have horses, or you may want to have a vineyard. It is important to know prior to purchasing the property what the allowed uses are. The way I help guide my clients with that is I spend 4 or 5 minutes just talking to them, getting to know them. It's small talk, but to understand what their goals are, what they hope to do with their property. If one of the people are an aspiring winemaker, they may not want to have a property in downtown San Jose. They may want to be down in a more rural area. It's important to discuss with your agent as you're looking at a property what the zoning is and what the allowed uses are. Additionally, it is very popular nowadays to work from home. And if you have a work from home job where you're working on the computer, that would be fine. However, if you intend to open up a daycare, it may be really important to know what the land use is for the property. And so it's imperative before you buy the property to ask your agent, to call the city, call the state to make sure that your anticipated use for the property, that you can use the property for what you are buying it for.
How do you assist homeowners with easement issues?
Easement issues are very interesting. An easement over your property means that while you still own your property, someone else may have the right to use it. And you may not be able to stop them from using it in the way that the easement allows. So when discussing easement issues, the very first thing you have to do is look at the actual text of the document of what the easement says.
I see.
In a lot of more rural properties, there may be an easement for a driveway for your neighbor. There may be an easement for, if it's a very rural area, for cows grazing. There may be an easement for access. These are all critical issues that you should know prior to purchasing the house. For example, if you have a shared driveway, you may wish to know when was the last time it was replaced? Who is responsible for the maintenance of it? What is the anticipated cost of the maintenance? These are all things that should factor into your purchase of how much you wish to pay for the purchase of your new home. I advise my clients, if there is an easement issue, is the very first step is to look at what the actual easement document says. If there is a dispute regarding the easement usage, I highly advise having a friendly, informal conversation to see if the people, the easement users and the property that's burdened by the easement can work it out, because easement issues are very tricky area of law. There's a lot of emotion because people say, it's my property.
Right.
But even if it is their property, if it's burdened by an easement, another party has a choice of use of that property.
Right.
So it's very important to try to remove some emotion out of this and sit down and have an informal conversation. If an informal conversation does not work, then easement issues are tricky. I suggest you call legal counsel.
And what about easement of public utility companies?
It is very common to have a public utility easement. Public utilities are for the benefit of the entire community.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're for a benefit for the entire community, there may be a sewer line easement that goes through your property.
I see.
There may be a electric line or some sort of utilities, whether it's internet, fiber, and it is for the benefit of the community. And even though it is technically your land, if there is an easement there, then the easement is for the public utility to use it, and you have to grant them access to it. It's very important for you to understand that anything from a telephone pole to an underground sewer, if it's for the public utility, there is a presumption under the law that it's for the benefit of the community, and therefore it is important for you to allow access and for you to understand that. Just because a property has a public utility easement does not mean it is less marketable. Because a property has a public utility easement, that's for the betterment of the community. It is not something to be scared of if you're looking at purchasing a house. But in the same vein, it's important to know what the utility is, what the scope of the easement is, and what your obligations are.
What are some of the most common boundary line disputes?
Thank you for asking that, because boundary line disputes are an area of law that's full of emotion. Most common boundary line dispute is somebody 20, 30, 40 years ago put up a fence. And back then they didn't have the technology, the GPS coordinates that people have nowadays. And so a fence line that's been there for a long time, people may say that is the boundary line. However, that may not be the case. California real estate has gotten so expensive, and people are fighting for every square foot.
Right.
Therefore, if a fence is out of place, if there is a tree that grew larger on the boundary line, and somebody either put the tree this to the left or to the right, and it doesn't follow the actual boundary line, people get upset about that.
Mm-hmm.
People get upset, especially if, for example, a tree on a boundary line is dropping leaves. Sure. Or some sort of fruit or some branches, or if the tree is getting old and might fall, because it's important to know who owns the tree so that that person is obligated to fix it or to remove the tree or to prune the tree. The most common boundary line disputes I see are in older areas where a fence has been present for many years and the fence is not on the boundary line.
Worried about the dilemma of selling first or buying first? TradeMyHome.com, powered by Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, has the solution. With our guaranteed 24-hour cash offers, you won't risk owning 2 homes or being homeless. You can buy first and sell later. Are you upgrading or downgrading in the next 3 to 6 months? Text PAIR to 408-740-7400 for a free and no-obligation professional equity appraisal report. For more information, visit TradeMyHome.com or call 408-740-7400. Remember, at TradeMyHome.com, your home is sold guaranteed or we'll buy it. for the next episode of Real Estate IQ, featuring Larry Stone, the distinguished county assessor of Santa Clara and a key figure in Silicon Valley.
Stocks and bonds were rather intangible. You were depending upon somebody else's management and somebody else's success.
His expertise and innovative leadership have profoundly influenced the region's growth.
I found real estate much more tangible. You could manage the property yourself.
Check out our full episode on Tuesdays at 5 o'clock Pacific and 8 o'clock Eastern on YouTube and Apple Podcast.
How do you handle landlord-tenant disputes?
Landlord-tenant disputes are a very hot issue right now. During the pandemic, many tenants either lost their jobs or had their hours cut or were not able to work and may have gotten behind in their rent. Now, the pandemic, while the effects still linger, the pandemic is still going on. Different counties and different municipalities handle landlord-tenant issues differently. For example, now in Oakland, the restrictions on eviction have been lifted. And because the restrictions have been lifted, a lot of property owners are seeking to evict tenants. Oakland, Alameda County in general is very tenant friendly. And so it's very important to know the laws of the local jurisdiction. Essentially, for landlord-tenant issues, it has to begin with a dialogue. A landlord and a tenant are essentially business partners, whether they recognize it or not. One provides housing, the other provides money. It's important that there's an open dialogue between the parties. If there's not an open dialogue, it leads to great conflict.
Right.
And with conflict, that's when lawyers get involved. Right. And it's a very high emotion area of law because you're asking someone either to vacate their premises that they've lived in for a while, even if they're just renters, or it's someone, I paid money for this house and my tenant is not paying me and I'm about to lose it.
Right.
Typically in my practice, I see people who have inherited homes and, whether it be the family home and they've rented it out. And there is a high emotion if the house where the landlord grew up in is not being treated correctly. So it is a very difficult area of law right now. There's a lot of tenant protections out right now. So obviously there seems to be a theme here is that try to work it out. However, if you cannot work it out, you have to go to court. And court is a cold place to work out somebody's residential issues.
Right.
It is best to reach an agreement with either your landlord or your tenant. You need to memorialize that agreement in writing and then reach a move-out date and then move out and then move on.
What is cash for keys?
Cash for keys is a local colloquial term for reaching an agreement with a tenant to move out. Now, whether the tenant is behind in their rent or if their needs have changed or if the property is not meeting their needs, sometimes rather than going to court and dealing with lawyers, it is best for the landlord to offer some assistance to help the tenant move.
Mm-hmm.
Many tenants do not have enough money to hire movers or hire a moving van to get to their next place.
Right.
It is important then, if the landlord has the means to, and the landlord wants to recover the property, is that the landlord can help out the tenant with their moving expenses. Therefore, the landlord gets what they want and they recover the property, and the tenant has the means and is able to move on to their next residence.
How do beneficiaries navigate probate challenges?
That's a very good question, Sharad. And the reason is that if somebody inherits a house they typically inherit the house with either a sibling or a close family friend or someone that was close to their parents who have passed away. And it's almost like you're forcing them into business together. And it would be a great world. It would be wonderful if everybody agreed, oh, so-and-so can live there and then pay rent, or maybe we rent it out. But quite often, people have different needs and different ideas of what to do with the property. For example, somebody may want some money to sell the property in order to fund a new property, maybe move out of state or maybe move to a bigger apartment, a bigger house. And the other person who may be in a different financial position may want to rent out the property and build long-term wealth. Neither one of those positions is wrong, but sometimes you are forced into that through a court order, through a probate, whether it's through a trust or whether it's through a will. So it is very important for the attorney to understand what the client wants.
Sure.
And what the property can be for each of the parties. And if they don't agree, that's when the court will have to step in. And if the court steps in, it will be a forced sale.
What one advice will you give to homeowners who may be facing any property-related issues?
My advice for homeowners relating to property issues is, I understand that it is your home. I understand that is your castle. But to take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and try to remove a little bit of emotion from it. If you're having a dispute with your neighbor, try to work it out without having to go to legal counsel. If you're having a dispute with your HOA, understand what your rights are and attend a meeting and participate. If you're having a problem with a former boyfriend or girlfriend that you own a house with, it's important to note that that there's a lot of California laws that will help protect you, but there's some that will harm you. And if you can take out the emotion a little bit and try to decide exactly what you want, then I suggest you consult a professional. You can discuss your options with a property with a licensed real estate agent. You can discuss your options with a real estate attorney. You can even discuss some of the tax consequences with the CPA. If you are in a property dispute, your job is to acquire knowledge. You can acquire that from your real estate agent, from your attorney, from your CPA. And with that knowledge, you can decide how you best want to proceed.
Thank you, Matt, for being part of our show today. It was such a pleasure talking to you. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sharad, for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure. Love to do it again.
Thank you for listening to the podcast and acknowledging the wisdom of smart moves in real estate in Silicon Valley. Please share this episode with a friend, subscribe, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts at Real Estate IQ. Thank you to our sponsor, TradeMyHome.com, for their client commitment and for making this podcast possible. If you're considering buying or selling a home, visit TradeMyHome.com. Until next time, remember to stay ahead in the real estate game.